Hello, and welcome to this evening's webinar. I'm very excited to have all of you here with us this evening. We are here to talk tonight about women's hormonal health from puberty through menopause. It really should really be post-menopause. We usually break up the webinars into different little subtopics, but there are many links and there are many transitions. When we think of hormones, we might think of just menopause or just puberty, but there are actually many other transitions in between there, as well as monthly transitions that happen for women. So we wanted to just cover everything this evening. Nearly 75% of women report experiencing symptoms related to hormonal imbalance. Yet only 20% feel that they receive adequate support from healthcare providers, and that really needs to change. So, we are here tonight to talk about hormonal transitions, some symptoms, and how those are reflective of something going on inside of the body and not a failing on a woman's part. And we want to empower you with really specific and practical understanding of hormonal changes. With me, I am so thrilled to have Dr. Stephanie Nielsen. Some of you who've been with us for a long time, remember her. She's one of the original clinicians here at the DNA company, and she specializes in autoimmune disease and hormonal health, which is one of the reasons she's here this evening. And while Dr. Stephanie is introducing herself, maybe all of you can type one word in the chat that describes how you feel about your hormonal health right now. Dr. Steph,
Hey,
welcome.
I
Dr.
am
Nielsen.
so excited. No, it's okay. I am so excited to be back. I think many of you know that my family's been going through a lot of stuff, and so I've taken a step back to do what I felt like I needed to do, which was be with family. But it feels so good to be here. So, for those of you who may not know me, I have a doctorate degree in pharmacy. I have a board certification in clinical nutrition. I owned and operated a wellness center in Southern California for over 25 years, and I have moved to the Midwest, thus all of my, much warmer clothing. But I have had an amazing hormone journey. And now that I have my DNA, oh, the things I would do differently. And so I think that's one of the things tonight that Dr. Steady and I want to talk about is don't wait till menopause to get your DNA done. There's so many young girls and so many mamas on here or grandmamas on here. One of the greatest gifts that you can give those grandbabies is getting their DNA done so they have this information early and they can avoid a lot of the pitfalls that a lot of us fell into. So I'm just excited to give you practical steps to give you real life experience and to help you use your DNA to be a better you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So before we start diving into the stages that women go through, let's just go over a couple of the major hormones and the effects that they have on the body, because when we start to understand what the hormones are doing, then the symptoms make a lot more sense, I think. So, um, Dr. Nielsen, would you like to run through a couple of them and then I'll pick up from there?
So do you want to go through just the key like estrogen, progesterone, or get a little deeper?
Yeah, we'll go a little bit deeper than that, but
Okay.
that's a great place to start. Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of people think of estrogen as the female hormone, but news break, both men and women have estrogen and they both need estrogen. And we think of estrogen for cycling in our periods, but guess what? Every tissue needs estrogen. Our skin needs it. That's why it's soft and moist and mushy. It calms our mood. I could tell when I had my children. My first was a daughter, and I was very calm, and my hair was very soft, and everything was gentle. And with my next child, which was a boy, my leg hair got super stiff and coarse, and I was much feistier and I had the testosterone going through. So estrogen is important for the brain, it's important for the bones, it's important for every tissue. So everybody needs estrogen, both men and women. Then we have progesterone. Now, progesterone is wonderful because it helps us keep calm. It helps us with sleep cycles. It's actually anti inflammatory for the nervous system. So a lot of us that start going into perimenopause or menopause, and we used to sleep great, and now we don't sleep, that could be a progesterone component, and that's something we can look at. Testosterone gives you drive and energy and confidence, and it's how you build your muscle mass, and it's how you can stay lean. Um, and then there are other hormones that I think are vitally important: thyroid hormones, insulin, cortisol, growth hormone. Now, if we get into different parts of the cycle, there are subcontexts, but that's a good overall. I will tell you this, the balance of your hormones is integral to your healthy longevity, and how those hormones break down or recycle or don't recycle are critical to your long-term health.
Absolutely. And I just want to throw out there one other one that isn't, it's not a major one, and it's not anything anyone would supplement with, but gonadotropin releasing hormone. I mention it because it helps link the brain and the ovaries. It's part of the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, which is a mouthful. Um, and it really helps with keeping cycles regular and making sure that ovulation happens and making sure that things become are cyclical because it peaks and falls. So I just wanted to throw that out there because stress affects it. And so when stress is high, then sometimes this doesn't function very well. And then that can lead to other kinds of hormonal irregularities. So, um, all right. So without further ado, let's get into puberty. I would say I'm glad not to ever have to do that again, except that I did just go through perimenopause, so I basically did. Except with more confidence and wisdom, I'd like to think. Um, so, um, so puberty. We've all been through it, pretty much everyone on this webinar, I'm assuming. And with it, that's when we get our secondary sex characteristics. And it can be a little bit of a roller coaster for some people more than others. Because not only are you having hormonal things happen, there's also a lot of brain rewiring. People become a lot more geared toward peers and the outside, and their family starts to look different to them. And for women, the menstrual cycle is a pretty vital sign that this has happened, that this is you've gotten to a certain place hormonally where ovulation and menstruation are starting to happen. And I know that back when I was a teenager, if someone had an irregular cycle or pain or headaches or anything like that, instead of really getting to the bottom of what was going on, we all just kind of went on the pill because that was the only option that any of the physicians had for us. But now we know that, you can look to different kinds of issues that might be affecting people already, even as young as during puberty. And it can be a little bit just like in perimenopause, when things kind of go up and down a little bit, that can happen in puberty. So it doesn't necessarily mean that there's something horribly wrong if someone isn't having regular cycles for a little while. It's just that if that continues on for a while, it would be something to get checked out. So, Dr. Nielsen, when we think about things that might need to be investigated during puberty, what are the first things that you think of?
I'm so glad we're discussing this. I was one of those who was a late bloomer. And as a late bloomer, I was 16 and a half before I started my period. Now, a lot of my friends had started at 13 and 14. And I remember thinking, oh God, you've left me behind. But the interesting thing was, after I had started cycling, I was very regular. And then came the crushing um, menstrual pains. And I was put on, now I'm a pharmacist. This is back before I was a pharmacist. I was put on 10 milligrams of Valium, 1,000 milligrams of ibuprofen 3 times a day. And I would have to take a day off of whatever I was doing, school or work or anything, spend it in hot baths, magnesium baths, like Epsom salt baths, and then have a hot pad on. Now, what do we know now that I didn't know then? My diet was intricately linked to this because I had very high omega 6 and very low omega 3. First thing, if you've got a kid who's having menstrual cycles, look at their omega balance. And then when we're going to look at the DNA, we need to look at the estrogen metabolism. Is it being metabolized at all? Is it being metabolized effectively, ineffectively? And the third thing I would look at is going back to diet, blood sugar, blood sugar, blood sugar. Now, I called myself a vegetarian. There were no vegetables in sight. I was a carbitarian, a dessertarian, a pizzaitarian, you know. And what happened was none of that nourished what we needed because in that puberty, everything is growing, everything is expanding, everything's blooming. And kind of like a plant in its big life cycle, you've got to add that great fertilization. Well, I was adding all the wrong components to that. So when somebody has irregular cycles, we need to look at their thyroid. We need to look at their athletic, how much fat they have on, because cholesterol is the mother of all hormones and breaks down into the estrogens, testosterone, progesterone. Or have we looked at what their cholesterol is doing? Have we looked at their sleep cycles? You know, we have our clock gene, and we are supposed to, as teenagers, be getting more sleep. And teenagers now are getting less and less sleep. They stay up late. They're on, their phones or on computers all day. The blue light messes up their circadian rhythms. There's so much that we can do now that would really help. And I see a couple people said earlier that hormones and sleep go together, just like that pre-puberty or that puberty, that teen there with hormones and sleep. Same thing with perimenopause and menopause. Sleep is critical. Sleep is when we repair. So paying attention to all those things will be really key. What about mood and genes with mood and beginning cycles and prepubescence?
Absolutely. And I just wanted to acknowledge that I didn't even talk about what was going on in the chat, which is I'm seeing people are confused and frustrated, feel stuck and unsure and multiple concerned. Um, so hopefully, and wow, we even got unhinged. You know what? I know what you mean. I've had those moments at points, and not now, but in early perimenopause. Um, so I just wanted to acknowledge that all of you had answered my question, and I didn't then respond to you. So I apologize for that. I was so excited to get started that I just didn't call out any of those answers. So speaking of which, mood. Um, so some of the genes that can really affect these things would be COMT, and with COMT, it's if you are more slow to clear certain chemicals, among them estrogen and uh, norepinephrine or noradrenaline, they're the same thing, they just have different names. It also affects dopamine. So that can affect how happy you might feel. And then also 5-HTT-LPR is another gene that could affect these things. So if all of you want to open up your apps for two reasons. One, if you don't have the app, you're going to want to have the app because we did add 6 new genes. The app is a really easy way to follow along during webinars. You can switch back and forth between your reports. Obviously, right now we're mostly going to be in the hormonal report, but right now we're talking about the mood and behavior report. And if any of you don't see your 6 new genes intermingled in your reports anywhere, then please do send an email to our IT team because you should, and we would like to know that so that we can fix it so that you can see all of them as soon as possible. So for those of you who are looking at your reports, when we're talking about COMT and we say that if it's your let's have a slower COMT, that's going to be AA. And a faster COMT, you're going to break down some of these chemicals much more quickly, 70%, up to 70% faster than someone with an AA presentation. And then AG, you're going to do that in a medium fast kind of way. And so how this can affect this is the sort of more the end. So we're gonna look at some other genes that are the first way that hormones start to get broken down to be water soluble and leave the body. Prompt is a little bit later on, but if it is doing it more slowly, you can end up with a buildup, perhaps of uh, things that you don't want. You can end up being dominant in estrogen because you're just not able to take that last step to get it out of your, well, not the last step. The last step would be urine or stool, but it's further along than some of the other genes that we're going to talk about. So those are the places that I start to go with mood.
So,
Was
as a
there,
pharmacist, let me add something. How many of
please,
you, and I'm going to have you guys put this, how many of you know that you're very sensitive to medicines? And if somebody says take one aspirin, then you know that you have to take a half an aspirin or just a baby aspirin. If you're very sensitive to drugs, put a one in the chat. I want to see all the ones, how many sensitive people have, and then we want you to look at your DNA. Or let's do the opposite. If you're not sensitive, where everybody takes one, oh, we got a lot of sensitive sweethearts. Or if you're not sensitive, put a two, because your comp, we want to look at your comp and see if you're clearing. Now, this really helps you and your prescriber or your healthcare practitioner deal with things. So if the normal dose of, let's say, estrogen, if you're doing BHRT, is a zero point 0.5 or 0.05, and you're like, this is doing nothing for me, and you might have to go up to do a zero point 0.1. If you have a fast comp and it's cleared quickly and you have healthy estrogen metabolism and we're clearing out, then you're going to need more than somebody who's not, and they build up and then they build up and they can get estrogen toxic. So I want you to make sure you're looking at your comp to see, do you, okay, so Farid says, I'm very sensitive, but my comp is AG. That's why, okay, you're middle of the road for your comp, but you're very sensitive. That may go to other genes, which could be your gut genes. It could be some of your other neurotransmitter genes, or it could be your methylation glucuronidation for clearing. So I saw a couple things before we go on, Dr. Steady. One, we should look at our poll questions because I think we have a lot of um, feedback in those poll questions as to direction for tonight, because I see a lot of people who are looking for help. Two, people said if they can't find their genes, where do they go? Type in CEO at thednacompany.com, CEO at the DNA company, and that'll get it put in. Or you can reach out at client care at thednacompany.com, and they're happy to help you with any of those. And if you look in the chat, both of those are listed in there.
okay. So yes, let's go over the poll. Thank you for the reminder.
Sure.
Um, So most of our audience is in menopause or postmenopause. And then then the second highest group is perimenopause. And then we have a few in their reproductive years and a few supporting other people. So it sounds like most of you are here for um, sort of the 35 plus information, but it's also, I think, helpful to reflect back over your entire reproductive life as we go through this, because we might be putting some pieces of the puzzle together for you, even in talking about younger phases. Um, let's see, most people are interested in understanding healthy aging and how to deal with perimenopausal symptoms, weight changes, and stress and burnout. Okay. Um, let's see.
Me too.
30, yeah, that's right. 34% are somewhat confident in understanding their own hormones. 31% are slightly confident. So we've got a fairly confident group, and 25% are not confident at all, and 10% are very confident. So we have a little bit of a mixture there, but still interested. Even the people who are confident in it still are looking for more information. Um, 67% of our audience has felt that their hormonal symptoms were dismissed by a clinician, which is fairly reflective of the statistic that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. And no was about 25%, and 7% preferred not to say.
So can I
And
tell
it looks,
you, as a pharmacist, I see a lot of these prescriptions. And my provider, um, I noticed all of his prescriptions were the same when he was prescribing estrogen. And I was like, when I was in with him at one visit, I said, I get the advantage of seeing what you write for everybody else as well as what you wrote for me. And I said, it's always the same. Women are not the same. We're big, we're tall, we're short, we're small. Our DNA is different. And he looks at me confused and said, well, it works 75% of the time. And I said, well, A, I'm not in the 75%, but what do you do with the other? And he's like, well, I don't get that many pushback. And I said, well, do you realize they're not pushing back because you're not hearing them. And so they're going someplace else. And he looked at me shocked and he said, well, 75% is pretty good. You can bet I changed practitioners after that. But the bottom line was that he is the most popular, has the prettiest center, and everything is gorgeous. And it's like the she fun place to go. But the care was just cookie cutter. And especially being part of the DNA company and knowing we are not cookie cutter, we are all unique and individual. I want to empower you to make sure you've got your app, you've got your DNA. If you don't have your DNA yet and you're here to support somebody else, get that DNA 360. In fact, I'm probably giving away a secret, but we're going to offer a discount tonight on that DNA 360. But you've got to say, this is not working. Who can I talk to for more information? Because you deserve to feel fabulous and you can.
absolutely, absolutely. So 44% of people here tonight are here for strategies they can apply immediately. And then the next highest groups are information about testing and personalized options and understanding how hormones are affecting mood, energy, and metabolism, which they almost certainly are
Mhm.
at all times. So um, once again, I want to remind everyone, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A, not necessarily in the chat. You'll get reminders if you put them in the wrong place, but I just wanted to put a little reminder in there. There was a question about which report we were looking at the time that I was speaking, and that was in the mood and behavior one. But we will probably be mostly in the hormones um, report for those of you who are looking at your apps. All right. So where where were we? Um, all right. So we were talking a little bit about we were still in puberty, and so let's talk about some of the genes that are in the hormone report that affect estrogen metabolism. So, Dr. Nielsen, would you like to start, or would you like me to?
Well, my computer just blinked. So why don't you start when mine
Okay.
comes back?
Yeah, happy to. Happy to. Absolutely. So when we're talking about estrogen metabolism, we already talked a little bit about COMT, but before that happens, there are some genes in your report that are worth taking a look at, which are in the CYP family.
Mhm.
That's CYP, not SIP. Although my phone would probably autocorrect that. So when we're looking at estrogen clearance, there's a pathway that is more beneficial. It's less inflammatory, and that's the one that we want your body to favor. So there's always a little bit of each of these in everyone, but if your body does not prefer the less inflammatory pathway, then you want to try and have your lifestyle and supplement regimen supporting your body in sending the estrogen down that particular pathway. So if you're looking at CYP1A1, that is what's going to tell you how if you have an increased or decreased metabolism into 2OH, and the 2OH pathway is the pathway that is preferred to have most of your estrogen go down in that step of metabolism. And so if in your report it says that you are an AA, then that means you have decreased metabolism down this pathway, and we're going to want to boost that And if you have GG, then you have increased metabolism down that pathway. Um, and if you have AG, then it's also increased. So it's really just the AAs that we need to sort of keep this in mind in terms of estrogen metabolism and toxicity. And then CYP1B1, this is how quickly you're going to metabolize or how much you favor metabolizing into the 4-OH pathway. And so if you'll see that it's GG, this is considered suboptimal because you like to convert into 4-OH, as opposed to CC where it's decreased metabolism into 4-OH. And then also CYP3A4, and this is where people how quickly or slowly they metabolize into 16-OH, where GG would once again be suboptimal because you have an increased metabolism into 16-OH, and AA would be preferred because it's a decreased metabolism into 16-OH. So those were the ones that I was thinking of starting with. Uh,
Yeah, so let me give you a little practical input on that. So on the CYP1A1, the 2-hydroxy, the OH stands for hydroxy in chemical language. 2-hydroxy is the positive, great estrogen that does all the things we want it to do. And this is the metabolite that is non-detrimental. So those of us who are AA, like I am, don't get a lot of the good, okay? So then we look at the 4-hydroxy with the CYP1B1, and the 4-hydroxy is the bad guy. So if you ever look at the 4-hydroxy and your 4-hydroxy is high, those are the ones that can cause DNA damage, and that's when cancer can occur. Now, I will tell you, I am a celiac. I am autoimmune. So my body likes inflammation. It likes to make inflammation. I had cervical cancer at 21. I had our DNA breast test 2 or 3 years ago now. I was the one of the test cases for it. I showed massive inflammation as I was heading down for breast cancer. And it was because I was able to look at my pathways and take that test and see the inflammation before cancer started, that I was able to turn it around. Now, here's the thing. The 16-hydroxy is proliferative. That means if you have fibroids and you have high 16, it likes to grow the fibroids. It likes to grow ovarian cysts. It likes to grow liver cysts. Okay, so what we want is we want as much 2-hydroxy as we can, as low a 4-hydroxy as I can, and then middle of the road 16-hydroxy. All of that is doable. Whether you have good DNA or bad DNA, you're not stuck with that. It's how you push it down the pathways, because it will follow down those pathways. So the good thing is, between your diet, between supplementation, between knowing things like, because I am a CYP1A1 with the 2AA, I must use like one of our DNA partner companies, Broccolite. We have an associative agreement with Broccolite. Broccolite has sulforaphane. Sulforaphane pushes it down the healthy pathway. I lower my 4-hydroxy, and so my 2-hydroxy goes up. Woohoo! Lower breast inflammation. That is great. And when we're looking at like the CYP1B1, we want to make sure that you are lowering your omega-3 or omega-6s and upping your omega-3s and keeping your blood sugar steady. So lots of things you can do. And I don't want it to scare you. I want it to empower you, because I didn't understand these things as I was going through these bouts of inflammation. It's like, well, everybody gets inflammation, everybody gets older. I didn't realize how much our hormones played into that chronic inflammatory cycle. And it's something so controllable that you can manage.
Speaking of management, um, let's talk about blood sugar a little bit.
Mhm.
So keep it blood sugar and hormones are definitely related.
Huge.
Um, and we're not going to spend a ton of time in because most of our audience is perimenopausal and menopausal. We're not going to spend a ton of time in the reproductive years, but we
Mhm.
will touch on some things.
Mhm.
But even things like PCOS have just this such a strong metabolic uh, factor to them. And
Yeah.
so let's talk about some of those genes and how they might affect our blood sugar and then how that all of that affects us hormonally. So some of the genes that you'd want to take a look at, and this would be in your metabolic profile, would be AMY1, TF7L2, MC4R, DIO2, which is one of our new genes, and UCP1. And these are some, and keeping this blood sugar regulated is a strategy for how you can really help yourself and feel empowered hormonally. And when we get into the menopause section, we're also going to talk about some changes that happen metabolically and in terms of stress hormones with changes to hormones and how really it becomes much more important to keep blood sugar regulated. So I'm going to talk a little bit about DIO2 right now because that one is a new gene. So many of you haven't heard all of us talk about it 800 times. And um, so if you're looking on if you hopefully have this in your app, CC would be the reduced version. So and so and let me back up a little bit. This has to do with thyroid health. Um, it encodes type 2, or it encodes an enzyme responsible for converting T4, which is a thyroid hormone, into T3. And I can sense that Dr. Nielsen is going to have some things to add about thyroid health. And this conversion is important for regulating cellular metabolism. So this is why it's important in terms of metabolism and why it factors into hormones. So if you have a CC, you have reduced activity and you have a reduced conversion of T4 to T3. So some people, when they have this situation, will actually, a lot of times, if you know that you're hypothyroid, that your physician might prescribe you T4 only, and you may be someone who does need T3 in order to feel better. CT, you're a moderate converter, which means, but it's still moderately reduced. So only a partial reduction in T3 generation, and TT would be the optimal. You have the typical um, s- uh, conversion of T4 to T3. So, Dr. Nielsen, I don't know, I just feel like you're going to have something to say about thyroid health.
Well, I just think thyroids are under um, underappreciated. And I think one of the things that I didn't realize practicing real early or even in my own health, I had what was called euthyroid. Meant one day it'd be good, one day it'd be bad, one day. And U is EU, and it means you're within that normal range. And I bet a lot of you are too. Like sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, sometimes it's whatever. But what we don't understand is what's destroying it. And a lot of what's destroying it are our foods and all of the chemicals that we put on our skin. And so it will trigger that thyroid. And I love that we have this new DIO2 because this really relates to thyroid driven fatigue. So, those of you who are exhausted, we need you to get into your app and look and see if you have that DIO2. The thing is, not everyone converts from their inactive thyroid to their active thyroid. You've got to have enough micronutrients, things like selenium, things like some iodine. A lot of people are scared to eat seafood now. Either they don't like it or they have allergies or they're worried about mercury contamination. And so they're not getting, like from seaweed, the iodine out of the ocean. So you want to make sure that you've got all the nutrients to support that conversion because it doesn't do any good to have a massive amount of T4 that needs to be activated and then you can't get it there. The other thing I'll tell you as a pharmacist is a lot of people are afraid to go on Synthroid or afraid to go on levothyroxine because they've been told they'll never get off. That's not necessarily true. Before someone puts you on a thyroid medicine, make sure you've got all your thyroid supporting cofactors first thing. Second of all, sleep is really vital. And third, you've got to, as Dr. Steady was talking about, you've got to have your blood sugar under control. Now, when people say blood sugar under control, they're like, well, my doctor says my blood sugar is fine. It's actually not your blood sugar, it's your insulin. Insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity. And that goes back to the PCOS, the endometriosis. Used to be that insulin was very expensive to measure, but blood sugar, blood glucose was cheap. So they correlated well enough. Well, now here's the problem. The problem is blood sugar can be masking. Insulin, you want to have like 1, 2, 3, or 5 as your number. It's called free insulin. And that's you've got a big, heavy uh, bodyguard that's helping take care of you. If your insulin levels are 8, 10, 20, 25, you got a bunch of Boy Scouts running around. Who do you want to protect your body and your organs? A group of Boy Scouts, little 8-year-olds, or a big, heavy bodyguard? I prefer a bodyguard, and a cute one, by the way. So the bottom line is get your insulin measured. And if your insulin's very high, what has happened is your cells have put this protective coating around them, and you can't get that any of your good fats in, you can't get that thyroid into the cells to activate. You're taking all this stuff, but it's floating around and then being excreted. We've got to get it into your cells, and we've got to get your inner metabolism, your intercellular metabolism fired back up in order to get these things converting. And you'll have a better idea knowing what those blood sugar stabilizers are. And we do. We have got genes that make your blood sugar goes crazy, and you've got to have a tight diet. We've got some people who can eat almost anything and their blood sugar stays stable. Knowing you, of course, again, I get all the crappy genes. I have like the Amy gene where I metabolize my carbohydrates so well. I can look at a muffin and put on 5 pounds because I take all those starches into sugars. My blood sugar goes skyrocket, then it packs it away as fat because actually insulin is a storage hormone. It is meant to protect us. We were meant to have little amounts of it in feast and famine, and it would help protect us so that we could have these babies and live a long life. Well, now we live in this never ending age of abundance, and that's why obesity has gotten so bad, and that's why diabetes or diabesity has gotten so bad, is because we never give our insulin a break. So learning to do about fasting, learning about timing windows, looking at your DNA to see, do you process? And if you don't, learning about appropriate fasting so that you can clear out the autophagy and lose some of that inflammatory cells would be a great thing. And that gives your thyroid a way to go, oh, some relief.
So, so Dr. Nielsen was just talking about Amy 1, and
Mhm,
it sounds like yours is TT.
mhm,
Um, and so people will have they have the highest amount of the enzyme amylase, and it starts in their mouth. Whereas someone with AA, if you're looking at reports, you have a lower copy number of those, and so you don't make as much amylase, and then food gets down into your gut, and then you can get a sudden spike of glucose as well, because it's broken down there instead of being broken down more slowly and having the insulin respond at that time. So that's a gene to pay attention to, as is TCF7L2. And that's also going to be in your metabolism report. And GG produces plenty of the protein implicated in blood glucose stabilization. GTs, you have a 1.5-fold greater chance of having an issue that could lead to insulin resistance. And TTs, it's associated with a 3-fold increase in insulin resistance. Now, once again, these genes are not your destiny, and there are things that you can do to prevent this from happening. But just genetically, this is your propensity, and so you want to, take action sooner than later to make sure that that doesn't happen. Fiber, lean protein, lots of vegetables. If you have some of these things, you may want to cut back or cut out mm, starches. You shouldn't do any of this without talking to a practitioner. And the combination of some of these things really tells the story of it. So you don't want to pick one gene and then decide you're going to change everything about how you're doing everything without looking at the full picture, probably with someone who is trained to be able to help you look at the big picture of everything. So, but it is important for hormonal health to keep your blood sugar in a good range and to keep your insulin, to not have insulin resistance and develop type 2 diabetes. So, wow, the webinar is just going by so quickly, Dr. Nielsen. So, the next
I think that
stage,
trend, I was going to say that transitions us perfectly because when your blood sugar is unstable, your brain doesn't think. When your blood sugar is unstable, you put weight on. When your blood sugar is unstable, your your symptoms become erratic. Welcome to perimenopause. And I don't know about you, but I used to watch like on my mom and my mom's friends go from being slender to all of a sudden they had these thick waists and they got round. And I said, I will never do that. I don't, they've let themselves go. Oh my gosh, what has happened to all of them? And, and for as overeducated as I was, I was really dumb. I didn't realize when the ovaries shut down and start shutting down, the body instinctively puts on fat because now estrogen's being produced from your fat. And this was again a protective mechanism. So when my little itty bitty 24-inch waist popped up to 28 inches and then 32 inches, I was like, I have been eaten alive by my mother's, revenge, and didn't realize that this was called perimenopause. And because I started my period later, I also ended later. I was actually in my 50s before I did that. So many women are starting into perimenopause at 35 and 36, and again, being dismissed by their practitioners because they absolutely have been exposed to phytoestrogens and xenobiotics and all of these competitive sites. And now with blood sugar being so unstable because of eating patterns where we're having the high omega-6 or the packaged foods that are so enriched, but they're enriched with things that trick the brain to prevent satiety. And so we're overfed but undernourished. And welcome to a raging perimenopause. And if you're like my girlfriends, where we sit down and we'll be at Bunko, and then everybody's sitting there going, can we turn up can we turn down the heat? Can we turn on the air? Because they're sitting there, they're having their glass of wine. That's going to throw some of their hormones out of whack. Maybe they haven't gotten their blood sugar stable. Maybe they haven't looked into bioidentical hormones. They're having massive hot flashes. They're trying to have fun, but this whole cascade of crazy is going in them. And then their brain, they're just like, they blink their eyes a lot. Do you find you blink your eyes trying to get that brain to concentrate because everything is out of whack? Well, there is relief, and there are a lot of things you can do with your genes and those swings to get them stabilized.
yeah, so during perimenopause, there can be these swings up and then these drops in estrogen specifically, and an overall, it tends to be an overall decline in progesterone. And this is linked to higher evening and nighttime cortisol, among other things. And cortisol, cortisol and melatonin have this opposite relationship where cortisol, it goes up in the morning. That's when you have your highest peak is about 30 minutes after waking, but it starts to go up before that, and then it goes down as the day continues. And then at some point, melatonin is going to start to rise, and that's going to help you to sleep. And so, as perimenopause kicks in, a lot of women end up with a flatter daily cortisol curve and a stronger stress response. The stress system just isn't functioning as well. So things that might not have bothered you in your 20s or even 30s suddenly can kind of overwhelm the system a little bit more easily. And if you combine that with the lack of calming influence of progesterone, because it does have that sort of anti-anxiety, soothing, gets you to go to sleep well effect, then that can really affect mood. It can and also affect how well you can respond to stress. Because if you're not sleeping well and you're feeling anxious already, then that's not going to help with these stress responses. So then lower levels of both of those things also reduce insulin's ability to move glucose into cells, which then promotes belly fat and inflammation and makes insulin responses more intense. So it's sort of like everything gets a little bit more intense or a lot more intense during this time period. And people stop feeling like themselves in a certain way that may actually mimic a puberty in a lot of ways, in that it's a little bit confusing, I think. Do you have any comments on that, Dr. Nielsen?
Just all of the above. You're absolutely right. Been there, done that, glad I'm out.
Right?
And God
Yeah.
bless any of you who are going through perimenopause and have a teenage daughter, because I did that, and that was so special. And she's sliding in, and I'm sliding out, and the clashes in between. So, just remember, I think one of the biggest things is give yourself grace and reach out and ask for help and say, I can't be the only one going through this. What can I do? Grab your app and look at where are your blueprint. I mean, I love one of the things that Dr. Steady said is this is your blueprint. It's kind of like a blueprint that you build a house. You can have three different people have the same model house, but one is decorated very modern, one is decorated very country, one is very, cutesy. Okay. They all have their own twist on them. Your DNA does not lock you in, but it gives you a roadmap or a guideline to follow or to go, most likely this is, but now let's put empiric evidence. And that empiric evidence is going to be getting blood level tests and see where your hormones are at. Um, a lot of people like to guess or throw a supplement at something. I'm all about test, don't guess. Because if you don't have a target to shoot for, then you're shooting blindly. You don't know where you're going to end up. So if you're feeling off, get your cortisol done. Like Dr. Steady said, a cortisol awakening response should look like a very high graph, and then it should settle down at the end of the day. And that's going to help you sleep. If you're flat, you're going to feel exhausted all day. You're like, my get up and go has got up and gone. Or if you're the opposite, you're low and you rise in the evening, you become a night owl, you get your circadian rhythms all messed up. So having your cortisol measured, having your insulin measured, having your sex hormones measured, it's going to give you a lot of data. It's going to point you with the right prescriber or with the right practitioner on how to balance those, either through diet, lifestyle, or supplementation.
Absolutely. Um, so then once you're through the little bit of a roller coaster of perimenopause, then comes menopause, and menopause is, defined as you've gone a year without menstruating. And so then everything after that, that's like that day. And then everything after that, you're considered postmenopausal. So a lot of times, at this point, without intervention, um, the men in your life have more estrogen in their systems than you do. And that's a really big difference in terms of where you started out to where you end up. And symptoms of menopause, in addition to the ones that we've already mentioned, can be, there can be libido issues, vaginal dryness, mood changes, cholesterol can go up, brain fog, like Dr. Nielsen was talking about, that, inability to think clearly, the body composition shifts we've talked about. And we really need to also start thinking about heart health bone density, cognitive health, and sleep as main health priorities. Before it may have been, how do I make it so that my period isn't terrible? And now suddenly it's heart health and cognitive health that we're worrying about, and bone density, because no one wants to be breaking a bone when that could be prevented. So, some of the things that can really help with this are things like weight bearing exercise. I'm a huge proponent of strength training for women of all ages. I mean, maybe not little kids, but vitamin D is a really important hormone there in terms of keeping vitamin D, magnesium, and vitamin K can really keep the calcium where it needs to be instead of letting it roam around in your blood and end up in your arteries, because we don't want that. And keeping inflammation low and getting enough sleep. These are some of the things that we need to focus on during this phase of life or before. Do
So
you have
let's go.
anything?
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
say this is one of the things that I think our report does really well. With vitamin D, a lot of people just say, okay, my D is fine. I have a 30. So I want you to know that 10 used to be the optimal level. Then the only people that were dying of bird flu or of H1N1 or some of the other flus, the swine flu, had 10 or below. This is a critical number you must know. And here's why. Now, the minimum number for your vitamin D is 30. If your numbers are between 30 and 50, you become bulletproof from getting coughs and colds. If you have autoimmune or menopausal, you've got to get up in that 50 to 80 range. So when your doctor says, oh, you're 34, you're fine. You're not fine. You fall in the middle of all the unfunctional people. I want you optimal. So vitamin D2 is inactive. Remember, some of us don't convert stuff well. So I love that the DNA report has three genes. So we've got our CYP2R1, and that's associated with the vitamin D activation and circulating D. We've got then our GCVDBP, and you can find this in the diet nutrition section. And that shows, are you more likely to have suboptimal? As I've said multiple times tonight, I got a basket full of these things. All of mine are suboptimal. How did I know, being Scandinavian, being blonde, being, whatever fair, that I was going to have potential problems with osteoporosis later down the line? If you drink a lot of soda and that phosphoric acid, that already is pulling your calcium out. You've got to get your D higher and get it back in. When we look at D, I always like to have K2, not K1. K1 clots your blood. K2 is a minimal clotter, but it actually will grab the free calcium that can become atherosclerosis and put it back into your bone. The latest research actually shows megadoses of K2. And the megadoses, normally we're looking at microgram doses, 81 or 45 microgram. Now they're talking 45 milligram. And there's only one company that I know that is doing that. But over a 2-year period, they've seen massive increases of bone density and bone remodeling without the atherosclerotic potion to that. And magnesium is critical. Now, I will tell you, more and more cardiologists are saying do not supplement with calcium because we have enough calcium in our diet, but you've got to get the magnesium in because magnesium and calcium compete for the same receptors. And especially if you're having trouble sleeping, you want magnesium biglycinate or magnesium glycinate. It's actually the same thing. That is the most relaxing. There's 11 forms of magnesium. Threonate is great for the brain. So I take magnesium threonate during the day, but I take magnesium biglycinate at night. So if you're going to take D, you've got to know, are you taking D3, which is the active form, or you're taking the inactive form that you have to convert? I find it fascinating, again, when I watch prescriptions, most prescribers are prescribing D2, the inactive form, and they prescribe 50,000 units once a week. Now they'll go out 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, and they'll recheck and they'll get a little teeny conversion. And I'll say to my patients, what is your level? They're like, well, it went up a little. It went up like 5 points. I said, then you're not converting, but you're pulling all this calcium out, and the calcium is going where? And they're like, I have no idea. And these prescribers are not telling them to take K2 with this. So I'm a bottom line. If you can't tell already, I'm a bottom line, get it done. What are the quick and dirties that you can do? And one of the quick and dirties is always use D3, always use your K2, and then you can get them in combination. So it's just a single pill, but know your vitamin D number. So I'm going to say, if you know your vitamin D number, let's put it in the chat right now. Are you a 30? Are you a 32? Are you a 50? Are you an 80? Come on, I want to see how many of you know those numbers. And if you don't, your your assignment tonight is you've got to pull up your last vitamin D. 68 for Ingrid. Love it, Ingrid. Lynn's 98. Oh, look at this. Michelle's at 50. Sheila's at 68. Okay, we've got a bunch of winners here. Look at all these. Okay, now Emily, she was a 33. Emily, we got to get yours higher. Nancy's 72. Lisa's 60. Look at women, round of applause. I am so proud of you. Not only do you know it, but you were in the target ranges. You were right where you need to be. This will help prevent the osteoporosis. This will help prevent this cardiovascular disease. This will help maintain or decrease autoimmunity. Well done, ladies. Bravo. Bravo. Well, brava. Brava. Awesome. Well done.
Before we get into the Q&A, is there anything that we didn't touch on? Because the time really did just fly, Dr. Nielsen,
Oh,
that you
it's
think,
always like that. We can always just keep going. And for all of
I
you who
know,
keep asking, yes, this is being recorded. Yes, you'll get a copy. And yes, we memorialize all of these. You can go to our podcast, you can go to our webinars. We love it for you to take away what you can now and don't feel, I know it's like drinking from a fire hose. Don't worry about that. What I want you to do is I want you to just go back and watch it and take some notes. And yes, Trudy, taking twice a day. For some people who have genetic issues holding on, multiple day dosing is fabulous. The other vitamin D that unit we have is the VDR, and you could be that your vitamin D binding sites don't respond, and that's why you need to take it twice a day. So those of us who are a little bit lower or have trouble, great idea. Thank you for reminding me of we need to split up those doses less, more often. But you know what? I'm sure we'll figure something out during the Q&A because we've got over 20 questions, and I think we should get to them.
okay. So our first question is from Debbie. I was prescribed estrogen vaginal cream, but no progesterone, and I stopped using it because I fear an imbalance. When I stopped, I had hot flashes. I'm 68 years old and just wanted to help strengthen my pelvic floor. Was I wrong in thinking that I need progesterone? I don't know the dosage of the vaginal cream. Um, Typically, if someone has their uterus, they do want to be doing estrogen and progesterone or estradiol and progesterone. But if it was a really low dose, like the zero point zero 0.01 cream, then it's not really going to be systemic. And the studies have not shown that you must take progesterone with that. But if it's that low of a dose, I would be surprised that you started having hot flashes when you took that away. So I guess I don't really have enough information. And also, I can't give you medical advice on a webinar because I don't know anything about you or your genetics at this time. But that's the answer about when you need progesterone with estrogen. Dr. Nielsen, anything to add?
So I'm going to add the perspective as a pharmacist. We see it very frequently that women have the vaginal cream without the estrogen or without the progesterone. Generally, it's 1 gram twice a week. And it mainly is a topical and a local effect, but there is some systemic in some women, especially women who are more sensitive. So if it stopped your hot flashes, kudos. But the two things that I would say to echo Dr. Steady is make sure if you're not having trouble sleeping, you may have enough progesterone, but I would get those levels done. And anytime somebody is taking exogenous estrogen, whether it's topical, vaginal, or oral, I always at least once a year or every other year, I like to have my urine metabolites done because when we put the estrogen in, we don't know what we're getting out. I want you to think of it this way. You have flour and eggs and sugar. Well, are you making a cake? Are you making bread? Are you making muffins? Are you making pancakes? Just because we have all the same ingredients, we don't know what we're getting out. Are you having the 2-hydroxy, the 4-hydroxy, or the 16-hydroxy? Are you metabolizing all the way through? Are you getting stuck? Those are the questions you want to have and work with a practitioner who either understands the Dutch test, understands genetics, but definitely understands your metabolites. But I don't think you have to be scared. Just we want to test and not guess.
Our next question is from Allison, who took the Dutch test and found out that she processes estrogen through, she says, a bad pathway. She's postmenopausal and on bioidentical hormones. She's working with Kashif and wondering if that's going to help. I can't speak to Kashif's program. I don't know. That's not. It's technically a different program, so I don't know about the understanding. But your test can help you to understand why that's happening. And there are things that can be done to counterbalance that. So the answer is that your DNA 360 holds a lot of answers for you, and that's the really good news for you.
Yeah, the fact that you have your Dutch and your DNA 360, you've got all the answers you need. Now just work with your practitioner to make sure that you get those answers that you're looking for.
Okay, our next question is from Jennifer. What else do I look for with estrogen metabolism if COMT is a G? And so, looking at the SIP genes that we mentioned before would be a good thing to do. And COMT is also really related to methylation pretty heavily. So that would be another report that you could look at would be your detoxification. Just your detoxification in general would be a really good thing to look at. Okay. Emily's asking which genes tell me if HRT is safe for me and how do I figure out dosages? Dr. Steph, I feel like I've monopolized the last few questions, so you go ahead and answer this one.
So I want to make sure that you're real clear on HRT versus BHRT. HRT is any hormone replacement therapy. If you're going to replace hormones, you want to have bioidentical or biosimilar so that because Premarin has 7 estrogens. However, humans only make 3 estrogens. Premarin is pregnant mare estrogen. So it's horse urine that collects the estrogen and then they put it into a tablet. I don't need those extra 4 estrogens. And that's where a lot of problems got with the cancer scares was because the body didn't know what to do with. So if you're going to look at hormone replacement, I'm going to encourage you to look at the bioidentical. The second thing is remember the DNA is only your blueprint. You've got to look at those urine metabolites to see which pathway is going down. But I will go back to menopause 2024, the Journal of Menopause. They did a study with CMS, which is Medicare, Medicaid. They took 10 million women's charts. Had they had HRT? Had they not had HRT? Had they had BHRT? Was it before menopause? Was it during menopause, after menopause? In every case, they found women who were on BHRT, HRT, or any form of hormone replacement had less chronic disease overall and better longevity, less cancer, less heart disease, less pulmonary disease, on and on. The best thing that happened is in this past month, the FDA has removed the black box from estrogen. The black box said, warning causes cancer, warning use with caution. This is a dangerous substance. They finally said, oops, we made a mistake. So they've had 3 decades, 30 years of women being afraid of hormones. And now they're saying, gosh, they actually work pretty well. So they removed that black box. And so more and more prescribers are going to start really embracing for those of us to get our hormones back to levels where we feel good, our brain functions and our body functions and our libido functions and our skin is smooth and soft and not wrinkly and dry. So I don't want you to be afraid, but I do want you to work with someone who is confident and competent, that you're listened to, that they test appropriately, and they really get you back so you're the best version of yourself.
All right, Allison is asking, my daughter just got diagnosed with PCOS. She has such severe acne that she's miserable in her first semester of college. Allison just purchased the DNA company experience for herself and is wondering what types of things she would learn if her daughter were to do the DNA test. And um, definitely knowing how quickly your daughter is converting progesterone into testosterone, how quickly she's clearing testosterone, and what her metabolic pathways are like, what her genes are like for blood sugar and insulin regulation would be really, really helpful in terms of PCOS, and how quickly she's aromatizing estrogen out of testosterone. So there are all of these different pieces of this that would be really helpful, I think, in terms of her understanding herself and how to take action in order to feel as good as she can and reduce those symptoms. Um, all right. Anything to add, Dr. Nielsen, before we move on?
She can look at yours and get a general idea, but remember, you only gave her half her genes. So she can't match yours completely because she got the other half from dad. So you're right, having her do her own, it is the best investment long term for her mental health, her physical health, and her overall longevity to know all her pathways. And I can't tell you how many times people look at one section like for insulin, and then or for acne or for foods, and then go back and all of a sudden they look at the mood section and then they look at the cardiovascular section. Each time they go, I never saw that section before. So you want to revisit your app frequently because we're always putting new genes in there and you'll have new ahas as you go through your life journey.
Excellent. Rachel's asking what strategies or supportive things might help with cortisol issues in mid to late 50s menopause along with MTHFR. And I'll let you start with this one. Go ahead. Dr. Nielsen, did you want to
Oh, I'm
address
sorry.
that?
I was moving my headphones. I didn't hear you. Did I? What strategies or supportive things might help with cortisol issues? Cortisol issues, we need to know, are you high or low? Do you need to be blunted? Liver and adrenals. Liver, adrenals, and gut. Okay. So the more stressed you are, the more cortisol you're going to make. The more stressed you are and the more overzapped your adrenals are, the more cortisol you're going to make. If you don't convert your cortisol into cortisone and store it for times of need, you've got to make sure that you don't have gut problems. If you do, you've got to start with your gut problems. If you don't have gut problems, we got to get it clearing through your liver. So, if your cortisol is out of whack and you're really anxious, there's wonderful herbs like rhodiola and ashwagandha that can really be supportive. But until you look at a liver panel or a gut panel and know where is your issue coming from, then you may be shooting again in the dark. I'm real big on test, don't guess.
Absolutely. Allison is wondering if she can still take bioidentical hormones with 4-hydroxy, and I'm not sure if this means that you took a Dutch test and saw that you were high in 4-hydroxyestrogen, or if it means that you convert a lot through the CYP1B1. I mean, yes, through CYP1B1.
Mhm.
But either way, this is a very individual question, right? I can't tell you whether or not it's appropriate for you without knowing your health history and seeing the rest of your genes. What I can tell you is that some people who do have a tendency through their CYP1B1 gene to push down the 4 OH pathway can still do bioidentical hormones just fine. It just depends on everything else and then what you do with that information and how you live your life. So that's the best answer that I can give with that amount of information. Jennifer's asking, what about CYP1B1? So we can't give you okay, anyway, CYP1B1 CG and CYP3A4 AG, what side do they favor, middle of the road versus suboptimal? Knowing that we can't give you specific advice on a webinar, I'm going to turn this one over to Dr. Nielsen, but I just wanted to point out that We can answer general side of the road things, but we can't answer things about anyone's specific situation. Go ahead, Dr. Nielsen.
So, Jennifer, if you see the CG and the AG, that means you're middle of the road. That means your lifestyle and supplementation and food is going to be most critical for pushing it down the right pathway. None of these preclude you from being on bioidenticals. So I will tell you that again, I have all the worst. I make the least amount of 2-hydroxy. I make the most amount of 4-hydroxy, but I do have to monitor. So I monitor how I feel. I've cleaned up my gut. I've had years of candida that came from my, having the cervical cancer and eating too many carbs as a kid. I had to go in and clean up the liver. All of this is why you work with a practitioner. All of this is why you work with somebody who can look at your genes, look at your lifestyle, and help you make those small little tweaks. When you're driving a car, everything is not a big right turn or left turn. We just do these small little corrections. What we're telling you is the more data you have, the better decisions you can make, the more fine-tuned you can do. So nothing precludes you from any of it. What it says is, you may have a yield sign or a caution sign, and now what are you going to do with it? Are you going to get heavier tires? Are you going to put it in 4-wheel drive? Are you going to take it on? So yes, I take sulforaphane and I take, broccoli from one of our co-providers. Yes, I monitor regularly. Someone had talked about, something that's not as expensive as a Dutch, and we put in the Mira hormone monitor. You can also do sections of the Dutch. You don't have to do a full Dutch or a full Dutch plus. You can do just sex hormones, or you can do just cortisol awakening. So there are many tests that you could do that are more affordable than the Grand Mountain. So,
Okay, Nancy's asking what are the thyroid cofactors one should be taking, and I'm so sorry, I don't have enough information to uh
one of the things that I said was selenium is
oh,
one,
okay.
iodine was one. So
Okay, you had said that. I'm sorry.
I had
I was
mentioned them
thinking,
earlier. Yeah.
okay, I was in context, that makes sense. I
Yeah.
thought it was just a general question about thyroid, and I was like, that really just totally depends on,
No, I had
what's
said
going on
make
with the
sure.
thyroid.
Yeah, I had said make sure you have all the cofactors that support thyroid. And that's actually an easy thing that you can Google or put in ChatGPT. What are all of the cofactors that support the body to, optimize your own thyroid hormone?
Karen is asking about uh, alternatives to broccoli. One of the important things when you're looking for a sulforaphane supplement is not everyone can make morosinase, which is an enzyme that helps you to actually be able to utilize it. So you can just search for a sulforaphane supplement that has morosinase in it and see what comes up and if it's easier for you to get in Canada than broccoli is. That would be my recommendation to you. But that enzyme is quite important. You don't otherwise you could take a whole ton of it and not be utilizing it at all and just be having expensive urine, and we don't want that for you, Karen. Okay. All right. I'm going to direct this one toward you once I've read it. Dr. Nielsen, can you speak to what a codominant hormone result on the DNA test means? How does codominant affect HRT needs postmenopausal?
So codominant means we're talking about the breakdown of your hormones. You don't break down just the estrogen, you don't break down just the testosterone. Your factors of how you break down are a little bit high, a little bit low. It means women who are very estrogen dominant are very pear shaped. They have the big thighs, the big hips, all the extra weight down there. Women who are very androgen dominant tend to be very lean and small and skinny and, kind of like we think of big runners. When you're co-dominant, you have some gentle curves. It's where your body packs on the fat. Yes, you can do all sorts of hormone replacement. Being co-dominant, again, the codominant pathways give you insight into how does the metabolism happen. If you hear nothing else tonight, it's not what you put in, it's how your body metabolizes it and takes it out. Are you processing your vitamin D? Are you breaking down your thyroid hormone? Can you assimilate and get those omega-3s in your cells? It's all about the processes. The higher your insulin is, the more those cells have protection over them. And when they have protection, they won't let things in and out. So if you started with one thing and one thing only, get your DNA test and then get on your app. Start watching these webinars. If you did a second thing, it's get your free insulin and learn about, am I insulin resistant and where do I go next? Because all the others will be so much easier knowing, can you open those cells and get your metabolism fired back up?
Awesome. Allison is asking what our thoughts are on GLP-1s for PCOS, long COVID, and in general. We are actually going to have a webinar about GLP-1s later on in this month, and about how genetics can impact their efficacy and safety. Well, maybe not safety, but how basically helping you to see what the factors are that can affect use of GLP-1s. Um, it would make sense to me that if someone had PCOS, that GLP-1s might be something that could be helpful depending on the person. And there are different presentations of PCOS, and not all of them will appear as though a GLP-1 would be necessarily helpful. There are four that have been identified. I'm not going to get into all of them right now, but that's definitely something that could be considered as a treatment for PCOS. I hadn't thought about it for long COVID. I guess it would depend on what the symptoms were of long COVID, if what how the person was impacted. So I don't really have enough information, and haven't read anything specific to long COVID, and maybe Dr. Nielsen has. And in general, once again, it's a nuanced conversation, and that's why we're going to have it next week. Dr. Nielsen, do you have anything to add?
I think my two biggest things, again, this comes from my pharmacy background. Some people depend solely on the GLPs and they don't take responsibility for what goes in their mouth. You can't take a GLP and then eat cupcakes all day. That doesn't work. It turns off the food noise, but you also don't need the giant levels that people are having. And my biggest thing with traditional medicine right now is, we have 2.5 and then 5 and then 10 and then 15 and then 20. But the higher the dose, the higher the level, the higher the devil. You get way more side effects. And I have a ton of people who have had side effects. I actually love that people are microdosing. So instead of having a 2.5, they might use a 0.05 and they might do it twice a week. So I think that we're getting in this huge rage and we're going to get high, high, high levels, and then people are going to crash. And then they're going to go back and microdose and find they didn't need them after all. I mean, we used to use 35 milligrams of estrogen. Now we use 35 micrograms of estrogen in a lot of our birth control pills. So I think the dosing is too high. The biggest problem I have is that if you're not lifting weights and you're not working out, you will muscle waste. When you muscle waste, you accelerate aging. Ladies, we're talking about skinny is not worth dying 5 years younger. So, yes, you've always had that 15 or 20 pounds and you want to get it off. Can you use them short term? Yes. But peptides sit in the receptors and they saturate. And that's why we have to keep going up in levels. It's better for you to take a month off, and do this microdosing and save your muscle mass so that you don't accelerate. They're now calling it Ozempic face, because people are getting so thin. And, back in the 70s, I used to see these like Twiggy. She was a teeny little model. Now, this year on the runways, I've just seen all of these emaciated. They look like concentration camp stars because their ribs are showing from their neck all the way down their back. And I just want to say it's not worth being skinny to hurt your body long term with all that muscle wasting, because it's hard to get it back once you muscle waste.
Thank you. Nancy is asking, is broccoli still helpful if postmenopausal or no longer necessary? And that depends. That depends on you, and what what your hormone situation is, if you're doing HRT, if you're not doing HRT, what your genetics are. So there are health benefits certainly to broccoli, and to all of its compounds. But whether or not it would be helpful for you in general, I would have to know more about you. Anything to add to that, Dr. Nielsen?
It's super strong. So I would not use it unless you absolutely need it. One of the things that I did as a supplement is I bought a broccoli sprout kit. Broccoli sprout seeds are really inexpensive. I put them in a half-gallon jar. I rinse them once in the morning, once in the night. And in 8 days, I have a whole bunch of sprouts, and I can eat those sprouts in salads. I can eat them on burgers. I can eat them. You get a lot of bang for your buck with those sprouts, but you don't force the pathways like broccoli. Even though it's a supplement, it is a very clinically significant doing stuff to certain pathways. And you want to make sure you need that before you just start slamming it.
Thank you. And our final question is from Linda, who says, "My DNA says I need magnesium 3 and 8." I think she means her report, but she has kidney disease and which it's not good for, and her urologist says not to take any more magnesium. We would definitely not tell you to not listen to your physician. So the reports are wonderful in that they're individualized. They're just about you. They're not about your neighbor. They're not about your sister, but they also don't know your entire health history, right? They only know the blueprint that you came in with. So you could have done that test as a baby before you had anything happening, and it would still be the same. That's why it doesn't need to be repeated, which is also part of the beauty of it. But what our life on top of our genes is what makes what the outcome is, right? So our and in this situation, we wouldn't want you to listen to the report instead of your urologist. Anything to add to that, Dr. Nielsen?
The only other thing that you may consider, and I would have you talk to your urologist, is can you take a magnesium bath, like an Epsom salts bath? That's a gentler way to add the magnesium that you get a little benefit, or a magnesium lotion. So I agree that if he has said, don't do it, we don't want you to do it. But I would go back and say, hey, I know that my body needs this, and it's used in over 300 different mechanisms. Can I use a lower, gentler form, such as a lotion, such as a bath? And how do you feel about that? And then get their input, because the most important thing is that you trust your practitioner and that you heed their advice. So we want you to honor that and that relationship.
And you can also ask your urologist what you're shooting for as a daily goal for magnesium so that you make sure that you're eating things that have the threshold that they want you to have, not above it, but not below it. So doing that through food, I think, is a really gentle and easy way to do it. And if you do that you want to work with your practitioner on it, then you really are working as a team the way that healthcare should be. So. Dr. Nielsen, it has been such a joy to have you here. I've missed seeing your face and hearing you. Do you have any final words for this evening? By the way, you all get the treat of Dr. Nielsen again tomorrow, along with Dr. Murray. So tune in for the double feature of Dr. Nielsen. In the meantime, do you have any parting words for our audience, our wonderful audience this evening?
I just want to tell you, you don't have to have numbers or letters behind your name. You have a PhD in you. You know when you feel good and when you don't. You know when someone's listening to you and when they're not. We're here to provide information so that you can get an aha moment and take that forward to be the best version of you. Don't ever let anyone tell you that they know more about you than you. And so we feel blessed that you're here tonight with us. We feel blessed that you've done your DNA 360, that you're diving in to understand it. I love that your vitamin D levels were so high. Kudos again. And we invite you to come back and stay with us and just learn more. And thank you. I'm blessed to be here. I'm blessed to have my friend Tracy Wood, the CEO of our company, continually reaching out and honoring the space I'm in now, taking care of my parents. And I'm blessed to have Dr. Steady, who's leading the clinician team, that just always leads with such elegance and such grace. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And all of you, thank you to our audience. And just remember that you're not alone on this journey through your hormonal health, that we are here for you, doing webinars and available for appointments and things like that. And just know that we see you and you are not alone. And with that, have a wonderful evening, everyone. And do tune in to see Dr. Nielsen tomorrow night.
Take care. God
Thanks,
bless, guys.
everybody. Have
Bye
a good
bye.
night.